Hey guys, so just getting right into it. One thing you might notice about this episode is you are seeing more and more of what I and All Might had alluded to in last week's episode about what the differences truly are between Class A and Class B, which is the case of technical versus practical experience. Class B, as we've seen, hasn't had all that much spotlight in terms of fighting villains, at least compared to Class A. However, in that time off screen, that time off screen, Class B has not only been able to hone their fighting abilities, but the timing of their teamwork and sense of strategy as well. Whereas with Class A, well, it is true that it's true that they've had more real world experience in terms of what villains are like. We're seeing here how that doesn't necessarily translate into having a cohesive team dynamic and a cohesive team dynamic and and strategic capabilities. In fact, the moment that really illustrates this is the scene back in the back end of season 3 where Monma brags about how all of Class B passed passed the license exam, whereas Todoroki and Bakugo failed. And again, it's such a one-off scene you don't think about in the moment because Monoma can be so annoying as a character. But obvious personal problems with Class A at the time aside, the license exam was kind of the first step towards drawing that contrast at just what kind of advantage Class B had over Class A. Now, don't get me wrong. That isn't to say that Class B is perfect either, and Class A as this episode also showed that pretty much Class A has pretty much done a lot in order to improve on their quirks, their abilities, and sometimes their teamwork. But at the same time, because more often than not, the one thing that from Class A is better at than Class B is in raw combat experience, and that in itself is worth something if you can get a feel for your opponent's tactics and respond accordingly. But even more so than that, this episode I think proved more than anything else that pretty much that when it comes to Class B, for as pretty much great as they are at pretty much team dynamics and as well as strategy, their greatest weakness also stems from having control over a situation. But once that control is lost, that's where that's where team efficiency for Class B like pretty much tends to pretty much break down. So yeah, just that's kind of one of the key kind of takeaways I've kind of observed just from revisiting this particular part of the story, honestly. And overall, though, one thing I feel already is a recurring theme in this arc that I've never really bothered to notice before is the idea of strengths and weaknesses. How the whole purpose of this joint exercise is to strengthen those weaknesses that is to strengthen those collective strengths and weaknesses that pretty much Class A and Class B have, or to try and compensate for them in some way, which is something both Class A and B will need in the future, because of course trust me, these are things that are important, believe it or not, even if it seems very mundane. Of course, the other thing about this is it does make me realize how literal UA is taking the whole idea of preparing for war, so to speak, because I already said this last week, but enjoy these moments while you can, because this will be the last time we even see Class A specifically in a standardized school setting before everything goes to shit. And that little parallel scene at the end of the episode near the end of the episode between Prince Shinzo and Aizawa, all the more confirms to me as to where the series is gonna take Shinzo's character after this arc. Like I'm almost 100% positive at this point that Prince Shinzo is basically going to be Aizawa's replacement. I also love how this arc did bring back an idea that's been kind of lost in the series, which is the technicals of how a quirk works, like the strengths and weaknesses of a quirk. Especially with how Shinzo's mask works in his conjunction with his powers, and how he explained to his team to his Class A team of the strengths and weaknesses of his quirk, which in weird ways it does kind of make sense, at least in terms of how he of pretty much of pretty much how Shinzo had used his quirk against Izuku when you look at it. Um, and really just getting to see these kind of little moments of getting to explore like the different quirks and just their strengths and weaknesses. It really overfeels a lot like a return to form of what the early stuff of what My Hero Academia was, where it focused on how quirks work and all that kind of shit. Um, but the moment that really got me laughing in amazement is basically how Asui's mucus was used as a means of camouflage, which is cool in itself, but how it tied back into the brief explanation of her powers from season one, it is a brilliant way of messing up of pretty much messing up Shishida's beast-like senses. Like if you're gonna screw with pretty much someone's like overall senses and abilities to like to sense people, that in some ways is the best way to do it. Um, Another, I guess, interesting thing I noticed about this episode is that I think whether it's the studio themselves or recommendations of Horikoshi himself, Bones appears to be adding certain scenes and contextual moments to this arc, and they're not even like major changes, but just brief little expanded character moments. And honestly, if that is actually the case, I'm not against it because for as much as I don't dislike this arc as everyone else did at the time, when it was running in the manga, I will admit one of the biggest flaws that I did discover is that unless it was Shinzo Monoma or Izuku, this arc did feel like it lacked a certain personal touch in the manga, and I feel we are getting that now in the anime. It's not through anything big, just through these certain little added moments here and there that really just kind of add a lot more character and character interaction, and it especially makes Class B a lot more personable as well. And yeah, can we just say this episode was pretty much just an overall redemption for it was an overall redemption for Kaminari, because as we all know, he pretty much got wasted. He got wasted by Ibarra in the sports festival, but here, even when he landed in a similar situation, he still managed to turn the tables on her by this time around by weirdly enough also letting himself get pretty much caught because pretty much by doing so Ibarra pretty much fell into the trap that pretty much that Kaminari had set, but which basically allowed like pretty much Shinzo and basically Sue and basically Asui to kind of like in order to pounce and just kind of and just trap everyone all in a single moment. Like that was just a beautiful way of that is honestly just a beautiful way of a beautiful way of like of putting emphasis on it. And you know what, that's also another thing I have to give this I have to give this episode for, honestly, is that it really gave a lot of really gave a lot of development and a lot of moments for characters who, let's be honest, I think have definitely kind of fallen have definitely fallen a little bit to the wayside in previous seasons. Like in season four, I'm not, even though seasons 3 and 4 weren't bad necessarily, they pretty much did have this kind of thing of being the pretty much Izuku and Bakugo show. So in season 5, it's good to see a lot of these dynamics, a lot of return to these like dynamics of seeing a lot of these other characters get screen time now. Um, and I love one thing I really love before I end this review is how we're getting to see from Shinzo's perspective that he's coming to understand the importance of trusting in others around him, and just in general learning to be more open with others as well. Like even though he used a lot of technical jargon in terms of like this is what it's like to be in the hero studies course and all that shit. Like he's understanding from that perspective. But one thing he's also coming to understand is pretty much just the kind of relationships you end up forming in the hero studies course. Like all these, like even though he can, like, he's understanding all these people are genuinely good people. It's just it was really just his perception and his like, I guess, jealousy like towards the hero course itself that kind of prevented him from seeing that when we first get introduced to him in season 2. So, but yeah, guys, that's all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and also Crunchyroll. Dan, that signing off. Later, guys.